It is the year 80,085 BCE. A young, naive, and destined to become an alcoholic Earth takes time to slowly evolve, slowly and beautifully, with lush ecosystems and fat, grumpy volcanoes and natural Dollar Generals sprouting over time thanks to a process we call evolution. Exotic and primordial cities of green spread all around with ambitious fervor as the only thing to stop them, the waters, only become more meaningless as ecosystems showed its true boundlessness, and the citizens of these cities, plants, who through photosynthesizing in the sun and being conscripted in the military to kill zombies, would thrive at leisure in their habitats, planting generations and generations next to each other in order to go check out what's in stock at the Dollar Generals, only for after hundreds of members in a family tree later, finding out it's a Foot Locker, the famous well was on the sign. Overall, it was a fantastic utopia. Until in the year 1962, where out of a peaceful shallow water came up these pink fucks who then do some stuff. I haven't read the rest of the script, but I can't see them doing anything. I mean, look at these. Why do their chins poke out of their face? What does that help with? Why not tuck themselves in? They're a bad species. They'll never affect the ecosystems. Did you know their biological ancestors are apes? Well, they didn't do anything either. Well, anyways, the pink animals burned down everything and ate all the plants. Next to those animals' new and improved knees and height and eyebrows, they had unmatched power over their whole world, able to manipulate every little thing into a shape they desire, like Zebra Batman Funko Pops, with a precision and craftsmanship of a god of forgery, something those puny postable thumbs and advanced brains that the plants had evolved for so long and so fruitlessly couldn't even have a simile to describe how dumb they were. All the animals took those parts to stake on themselves just so they can think of tits and jack off. After cleaning up the place and starting their world on a clean, rocky, and frankly but ugly slate, and since these were older times, you should get comfortable. They weren't always right. They made themselves some big mountains out of some styrofoams found in the sea, dug out some holes, planted some bonsai trees and shit, and wore some pelts designed by Sheen and sand those holes to hang out, maybe fuck, or maybe draw crayons on the walls like they never grow out of a kindergarten to negate the last one. I know, it was so last more than half century. I'm glad we're not that species. But all of these animals, they weren't satisfied with only a nice place. You can never satisfy these imperialist fucks. So just 2 days later, these animals have completely traveled through all over the world, carrying around their Fisher-Price sculpting sets to make the world swacked out in their own way. They erected a bunch of mountains and other terrains. They dug down some caverns and filled them with glowing uranium that they got from a Fortnite-themed giveaway. They stuffed some fake boats to make this cool-looking species, so whoever comes across them thinks they must have been there before. The sun is a fucking incel. It complained to everybody there about how the woman are a harpy, so it's all the alpha males keeping him from fucking. So I just left the boulder at that beta male and told him to fuck it. In fact, the place they did was so kinda interesting, it's not that important, but those mountains look nice, that it got even more animals to slither out of those big old shores and live around them. Not only does that spice up some stuff, but that also means we can actually for these pink buffoons that to make them interesting. Let's see here. What are their main characteristics? Argumentative and horny. And if we translate these to their Roman counterparts, we can use these to form footballs. Fantastic! So the footballs were soon all surrounded by visitors and such, looking to rightfully live on their land. Well, aside from these guys named the Fish, who saw a bunch of videos and did research on the topic and decided not to come and stick to playing Minecraft when the scuba divers started looking and juking the fish sticks to Chinese women named Si Shen. Before the rest, plus time to meet the new foreign exchange classmates! There were the birds, who keep just a bump away assorted lots of wood for a good salary, so they could go home every day to type out a review on everywhere at the end of time, so they'll later post another one tomorrow. And also recreationally supplying some cardboard for fun, creating such drawings as My Greenish Italian GF by Davy Ian, and such architectures as I Did This to Show How Sorby Is by Pex Amma Johnson 69. There were wolves who spent their days delivering fast food to random people as an excuse to get their customer 500 kilometers away, like in Antarctica, so they could fucking run the earth like motorcycles and then give Santa Claus his McDonald's. The football's old neglectful fathers, the apes, have come back in their lives specifically to ask them if they can share some of the lottery success with them. Or to make machine guns for cash, the tour and comedy, who use them once they fully fill their place with sand and can now build on it. For very skinless ghost dumbasses that were so self-conscious, they stole some of football's pounds from machine to wrap them all around their skin and call themselves tigers. I know what else to do. Come to think of it, I've never seen these guys since. Beautiful, ain't it? Well, not the most xenophobic sentient tards, at least, because they had to do something about it. Such unambitious stories. One goes holding a pirate binocular, while a crack pipe, 3 XL-size guns, a legal thingamajig that lets them own what their sons got, and a pizza with wheat brownies on it sit beside in the cave. We're the superior species. Only us can change the world and worry about our existence. So they walked around, full of hidden plans being formulated in the football's head. The sentient thought accidentally stumbles into Aya, one of Saturn's many moons, hundreds of kilometers away from Earth. The football did not realize this, and so walking, he discovers something magnificent. That's right, the footballs found diamonds. The blue log of carbon to become one of the entire species. Swiftly after the football brought all of them right back home, everything changed. Cities, farms, and such began sprouting all over the place, with hair dismembering salons, amusement parks, which are like regular parks, but there's a clown there, and emergency dildos to appease Godzilla once his rampant hormones cannot take it anymore and have to defile the Abraham Lincoln statue for the 5th time now. All rose up from the earth like volcanoes. And not only that, but it was all for diamonds. Diamonds were needed for daily activity. Diamonds determine your social standing, and if you didn't have enough of them, you'd be straight up executed. There were festivals for them. You were supposed to say your vows to your piles of diamonds, all the sort. And using these gems as their motivation, they captured the entire animal kingdom, put them all in a boat, beat the crap out of every single one of them, and pushed the animals onto Antarctica over there with pure diamond fever just before going back to their home city for the diamond religious ceremony. Why? Because they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the diamonds. So anyways, as some of the footballs go live their life in concrete buildings and kinds of apartments for the first times, full up with toasters, computers, and buns on their bookshelf disguised as books that will impress leads to the bookshelf moving, leading to an alternate universe where everything is the exact same as it is now with no alteration, except SpongeBob is here. Things were going up in swell in Europe, with all the cities and such sprouting out all independent of each other and scattered about. Now that you will be able to tell them all apart, with how all of them love diamonds, love concrete, and use diamonds to get motivated to make cities in 3 hours. Even fetishes that couldn't exist before specific advancement in technology like robophilia were already beginning to exist. But little did they know that over the endless Atlantic Ocean laid an end where a whole entire new species completely different to them lived uncontacted. They were Americans. Every day, the Americans would wake up and put their state-provided cowboy outfits and leave their cactus homes with a revolver and shotgun. Every meal of the day would be tapped off with a thanking to their lord, McDonald's, their formless deity that existed more as a concept, and every night they would gather around the campfire and listen to religious tales of a great battle between Coca-Cola and Pepsi and the great downfall of Blockbuster. While someone got eaten by coyotes alive for atmosphere. They were a devout and religious society, with their big Wild West cities stretching for as far as the Rocky Desert did with culture and beauty, fully unconnected to the west of a green rock. They were also focused on their holy teachings as got by their own holy Bible, McDonald's pinned to its longer, which were sex is absolutely degenerate. Violence is fine though. Burger King is the Antichrist. And the One Piece sucks balls. This is important. Why? Well, you see, all of our gods and religious figures, they were real. And just like how the real Jesus was found in 2014 in Italy, sadly watching everyone enjoying their time at the water park while turning the water guns of passing children their ass into a wine gun, McDonald's and Burger King and Adam and Eve and everybody else were nothing but giant logos levitating and whizzing by the countryside, powerfully lasering random people and killing them whenever they want. The levels of power are dictated not by fame or fortune, but by how many people remember them. Every time somebody thinks of them, it increases a little. So basically, a big huge platoon of flying brands in the West have been powered up, and they hate each other. In fact, they so hate each other, McDonald's tried to rewrite their Burger King is the Antichrist rule to be homophobic and racist, the hamper brigade. This is in fact why America was such a supremacist culture. Ask someone who used to live in America and they tell you how other gay love was frowned upon. But right back to the other place on the earth where history happens, let's check on the greatest society on the block, Phoenicia. It's the biggest and most economic city in the world, 10 times bigger than the average city and 3 times bigger than the amount of lawsuit paper that a FNAF-loving teenagers if it got total management over a Chuck E. Cheese before it shut down would have. It was the most wealthy city of the blue ball thus far, famous for being the seller and producer of almost the entire world around them, and solving the most amount of problems around. Problems solved include their everybody included controllers for the PS5 for when you want to play Sekiro in the absolute most smooth way possible. Braille language works for Lego LTD so you can write your blind husband you hate you're leaving due to his drinking habits, and robots catfish fandom porn. And with a supply of never-ending goodness to themselves and all other cities, the citizens lived content, thanks to everybody having a good supply of diamonds. If you had upwards to 50 diamonds in your capitalistic possession, you would become more outgoing and give more thought and analysis of a world next to you. You want to go look into more and more hobbies and pastimes wherever you can find them, and you find instant gratification more and more filthy. If you had upwards to 75 diamonds in capitalistic possession, you would become great at social interaction and making yourself look charming. You would be enjoying the most wondrous rabbit hole of the earth. Normal thing turned amazing by normal thing turned amazing, and you would have a healthy amount of separation from the trappings of society. How? Because you enjoyed it. They enjoy the diamonds. There's no magic in them or anything. But then, in the year 1963, a tragedy would spark a flame that would lead to one of the biggest revolutions in football history. The tragedy was Tornado Baby Sex, a tall, hunky F5 in the Vegeta-level twister coming at unescapable speeds, proceeding to completely miss every single city in its path. The only thing it did is strike every single diamond mine ever, and also swipe away as many diamonds from the citizens' houses, dragging it towards the east, a land never before crossed by Europeans out of boredom. This was the worst thing conceivable, a disaster so horrible it rendered the idea history was strung along by fate impossible, as not even God could imagine such a thing. People lost their will to go outside, making the cities disturbingly silent. People lost their will to chase their dreams and started believing their life was only a one-shot path of fate. People lost their will to eat and then got fat and ugly anyways, while starving. And even worse, those damn bastards at the top started hoarding their diamonds, refusing to give even a single drop. Now the diamonds became a finite source and people were out in the streets trying to kill each other for blue beauties. Those selfish kings kept to themselves. While they were actually trying to fix the issue before anything awful gross, trying to make new diamonds mines and such, it was too little too late for them people, as the idea of starting a revolution was so keen that everybody wanted to kill their kings anyways. And after the last push of revolution came after Phoenicia's king, JPEG Mafia, was caught sneaking into an airport in Australia in order to escape the threat of death, leading him to get thrown out of a plane and crash asteroids back in the harbor. The revolution started. Did I say started? I meant halfway there! Skyscrapers of gay sex, the first class fell down from their own gravity. Hands were popped down from their necks like chickens jumping to take flight. And in my opinion, I think it's going well. They had successfully filled their pain in their heart with their sweet, sweet diamonds with nothing but how cool they look right now. Getting everyone a kill to their own name, even if their only experience with violence was eating chicken wings. It was so spankatory, frankly, that some surviving noblemen and other government bodies decided to unite together and form some foreign countries, such as Germany, Norway, and Spain. Trust the revolutionaries aim for the most powerful of the men they're next to. The slightly lesser ones could sliver out and save their own skin just to make it a little better for each other. Some brave souls took the more dangerous but peaceful route and decided to travel east with nothing but bags of pussy to eat and a walking stick. God bless them, says a sea boy. Doing that will stop you from watching some movies like Weekend at Bernie's or The Good Though Bad Your Mama. He continues, never having heard of animals since they were banished, or the idea they might be there armed in camp like a naive child would, before brutally slicing over Marie Antoinette. But for a while the status of each brave and lonely lass would be left to the dreamers of the world. What could happen to all the land their ancestors sculpted out left unattended for their favorite spot? How could the animals here get fucked, George Bush? How could the animals even get back to the rest of the world after we pushed them to Antarctica? You see this map I showed you earlier? Well, if you look at this map of Earth for a bit, you might notice that under and next to Europe, you can see two other really big continents that you've never seen before. Why is it there? Why haven't we nuked those places already? Do they know only Europe matters? Well, to easily sum up the existence of it, let's go back in time when humanity banished the animal kingdom to Antarctica. When the boat finally bumped into the icy cold harbor of the South Pole, the animals simply picked up the wind oars and sailed right back inland, just as humanity abandoned the place for their cities. This allowed for animal kind to take its opportunity to start their own little society. Villages of stone walls and hay roof laid out semi-organized as some animals prepared to go to work on the fields for some 9 hours to pay off rent every day, so they could retreat to their home's couch and watch a plant desperately try to hide the body of a dead flower killed on the table because the police will come for Family Guy's signature entertainment value before coming to bed. They went to sports stadiums to watch the latest of trampoline tennis, which is exactly like normal tennis, but the field is a really big trampoline, because that's just the way tennis has to be. They took planes to experience the new horizons, like the H-shaped cave entrance in Tunisia, or the I-shaped tree in Zimbabwe. Oh, and just before the tornado came, some trepidation came up regarding how they should treat the batches of nomadic footballs breaching into their place, an issue that has been dealt with before. Some animals, for any footballs in their court, would be opening a Pandora's box. Some animals believe they should be put on a little surveillance. Some animals, the footballs were just told to go back where they once came. That's everything. When the tornado that caused that swept in, still avoiding the city, spewing diamonds in the air before accidentally stumbling in a city park and slowly wilting away in the trap, the animals found diamonds. They liked these new blue shiny jewels that it was a popular item to be used as a family heirloom, passed on generation to generation, and not much else. They had better things to think about. Thanks to these diamonds serving as general mood enhancers for everybody in the animal kingdom at large, some even got brave and started to think about crossing into Europe. Back to Europe, after the revolution was finished at last and everybody came back to their roles, the place marched on from where it last left off. The new governors got old and fought rebellion against the societal norms were bad, commercialism wound back up, and the waste money for absolutely no reason temples of Satan known as casinos were being erected back up. And those vagabonds who left their homeland for diamonds came back to tell the people what happened. Once the press caught their observations on paper, the implications were pivotal. Any measurement of the animal kingdom, and neither was there a hint of whatever was their power. But what they did know is that they were now paranoid and ready to fight as shit. Feds and several new bureaus were out checking for animal spies all around the countries. Conspiracy theories of the animals plotting an attack on them because the filthy fucking animals sprung into popular culture. Four-legger became a very common insult for things you don't like, and five-legger became an insult for horses, and being a furry was reviled, being seen as an act of treason to your species. Especially after the hot scandal of Doug Counterfeit, a man who was tragically nailed into his fursuit by a freak construction site accident and lived with needing assistance with everyday tasks and feeling sweaty all the time, was actually a dog that snuck its way over here to enjoy the luxury of diamonds. But that can-refuse incident was only when the gun blowed. It's right after that would start a campaign of proxy wars and spying on their enemies, with the states all gearing up for some kind of war to happen with a kingdom they barely knew. But thanks to the CEO of Department of General Animal Defense, Pissface, the proxy wars were thought of to be against bogmen for their camouflage, since none of them ever jumped at them with knives screaming animal slurs at them, which they always did, and spying planes that barely caught anything good were waved off as weather balloons, which helped a lot to make their Cold War never actually become a war. In fact, despite the clearly boiling tension brought on almost desperately by humanity, the next major war on Earth would not feature animals and humans. It would be something even more reasonable. A fight between themselves. Somewhere in some small little high-class city in Germany was birthed a boy named John Hitler. John Hitler was just a little German fat kid wearing a propeller hat and holding a large popsicle living in town, with an even larger dream of becoming a successful painter living peacefully in the countryside where he'd smoke a joint and fuck his wife every day as one would. Waiting for art school, learning the tricks, and getting ruthlessly bullied for his unfortunate surname, he submitted his art to his teachers just to let them find out they were actually just really mediocre and uninteresting. This made Hitler so mad he became racist and evil, and that he should now do evil things. Taking a hint from his idol, Darth Vader, he set his sights on conquering the world and then maybe the rest of the solar system. And so, for his first course of action was to kill Germany's mayor, Mellenpulse, and establish himself as Führer, starting off strong with a 0.07 of Earth's land at hand. Planning of power for his next action to get all the orcs, demons, and goons using the country's certainly cooperative cavalry and take over the human side of the earth. Sudden twist, it's a multitask, as he just incidentally tripped into a civil war between him and everyone else. Their first civil war, completely unseen. Since he had the more iconic mustache, he get the first swing at them, taking over Cloud Cuckoo Land up ahead in the clouds. This was a very tactical decision of a demonetized general, as taking over the giant Lego movie reference around Germany and many other European countries would swiftly ensure their enemies will need some more security and such for air-related stuff. Now it's the West's turn. The powers decide to sign a treaty against Germany for them to shut the fuck up, sit down, abandon Cloud Cuckoo Land, don't do anything, all against his own will. As the powers declare this a damn good job well done as they open themselves up a cold one before going back on how to deal with animal kind, Hitler stayed stewing on the stairs to his house, scratching his head with angry curiosity, wondering how exactly he was gonna conquer the world now. There he sat doing this for a while, a real brainstorm session, almost calling it quits, when Hitler looked down and saw a small mouse rapidly connect and unconnect their miniature television in mounting frustration. Hitler got up, pointed at the sky, and said, "They can't impose that treaty on me if I dissolve Germany and then undissolve this Nazi Germany." And thus, just an hour later, Hitler not only just did that, dissolving and undissolving into the most infamous dictatorship of 1964, doubled it with a surprise takeover of their neighboring countries, France and Poland. Why do that first thing in a new country? Well, you see, it's very strategic. Just before transitioning into Nazi Germany, Hitler started what was called and is known as the Holocaust, where every non-German was captured and added to the tally of his genocide. Though it went okay for a couple of days, it soon backfired on him when he found out that nearly 80% of his entire militia was black, ethnic, secretly queer, and or secretly married to ethnic women, which would typically lead for the women's husband to join in with their own pistols. To fix this, he knew taking over France and Poland would allow him to crack a dick joke about the ethnic woman's husband at a meeting with his admirals. So, as all the other countries, now in panic, started to rush onto Germany with their full military to shut this as fast as possible so they could get back to their fear-mongering, Hitler, realized that the amount of semi-traumatized man he's got now would simply not cut it. And with a heavy bag of money and an idea in the head, Hitler then expensively attached a module to every single one of his soldiers' rifles that would make their bullets fly into any football nearest to them, stopping the need for aiming. This was helpfully engineered by a team of German scientists on board, and right as the new rifles would be took out into their first ever battle, being with charging Englishmen in the field, the men shot their rifles, only for the bullets to loop into the top of their skulls and kill off his entire last batch instantly. Hitler then tested if something gone wrong. After the soldiers found out what happened, all the leaders of their own nations started scavenging to grab German scientists so they could find out what they knew for a couple hours, until all of them suddenly landed into a passionate kiss with each other and then decided it's best they all shared them. And so was the end of a general inconvenience that was World War II. Now that enough time has passed, let's check on our old friend, or not if you're from anywhere but the US. Say goodbye to your cowboy hats, your cactus houses, and your ineffective walking stick. It's time for gay gray wigs, fancy marble structures, and your trusty bunderblust. America is having a revolution against their gods, believing that to rule over them was a violation of their human rights, and that not being on the same level as them only was for reducing their freedom. Instead of firing their bunderblast at them as if they were some daft punks, they were educated, simply ignoring them every time they flew and avoiding talking or thinking about it like it's a cognito hazard. This was horrible news for the brand, as even with retaliating with lasering citadels down with reckless abandon would not be enough to beat their power to not think of things, especially since they now have better things to think of. So, these soon-to-be-forgotten gods decided the following they gained was much too strong for them to control, and decided to head east, where they could gain a following once more. Back in Europe, what was the better things to think of that the Americans had? Why, of course, one day in the polite fat summer in the East Coast, a message in a bottle washed ashore of them. It contained an image of a man on an island shaped like a trash bag screaming, a tower of pulsating oil, some text in a different language than American, and a strange blue object unknown to them. They did not know where the location of this junk island could be located. They haven't searched that much, and they certainly didn't give a hoot for useless oil or whatever this man is getting so fussed about, seeing how he could just swim. But that strange blue object, man, I think we ought to see it. It's probably something that we'd like, in a way. So out of curiosity, they committed genocide against South America in an attempt to find the island. I'm sorry I didn't tell you South America had footballs in it, but they're all dead now. Along this normal pilgrimage of theirs, shooting their bunderblast to anyone who'd be near and there, they were believing fondly about the future, imagining their offspring schooling through their phones for an hour or so with great tears in their eyes. A great consequence for all their efforts. This was also a big topic on all the motivational speeches there. Back yet again to the little general of the world, the leaders, just after Hitler bit the dust they brought to him on a silver platter, were just packing up their personal German scientists for personal advancements individually until making the necessary mistake of looking back. These brands, these ghostly entities coming from nowhere and from ill will have grappled the lemon that is the land and will soon squeeze in 10 seconds. One tentacle hijacks the radio tower system. One tentacle spreads posters of their visages all around the blocks. Either they give up and accept their new overlords or stubbornly watch themselves be turned into statuses. Looking at the new takeover launch into the land they own, the generals stare a blank as delay for their reaction. But they decided an instant retaliation to the threat, in order to take advantage of a short window of time that may benefit them, just like the animals when they took advantage of a Hitler situation, to set up camp beside the border. which meant this would be one of the trickiest situations a human league would ever follow. Thankfully for the Squeaks, there was only so much legwork for a slip, and so the leaders began to go to war on the brands by setting up trenches near their headquarters where they had taken refuge to reserve some energy for daily attacks into the HQ, hoping to kill these brands as fast as possible before those pesky animals did anything. Aside from any spying, which they believe they may already be doing, the next step was to get as many folks on the government side with propaganda, along with making conscription seem great. This was done by marketing wartime as a heavily forced TikTok trend, highlighting the fitness elements and how you can burn off some calories, and also saying that Ronald McDonald was the one who nailed cheeses to the crucifix and that joining battle was the only way to pay respects. And the most important step, pray to God it goes swell, not knowing they made those brands even more well known to the public. Just back when the footballs were being distracted by Hitler back in '64, the animals took the opportunity to cross through the Asian landmass without harm thanks to the soldiers on their proxy wars being gone for the moment, settling next to a border in a wait for civil interaction with fellow members of a Club of Earth, separated from quite a large distance from their homeland and with a squadron like a military base. It developed a fair bit different than back home, carrying with them many or even more tons of hard marble for base construction, a cheaper alternative than the material of your big-ass ego. They spent their days walking around with protective magic ropes that breezily protected them from any sword or bullet while outlining which armed wearer has decided has sinned more and thus will get more cold. They got into assemblies every day to vote on whether they should catapult corpses with letters asking those footballs to step outside, wherein they always end up deciding no before coming back the next day with a slightly more egregious letter. And best of all, some of them were alarmed at how many people wanted to go see to all the football kind. A hate against footballs wasn't new, of course, as ever since the failed exile, hatred against them was steady. This led to a camp growing inside a faction that would call for a new TF2 update, which was a codename for an all-out attack on them. So the higher-ups decided on a compromise to keep it peaceful. They will build a giant shotgun next to base pointed to the footballs so the people can feel much safer when they choose to communicate peacefully with them in the next couple of days after it is built. Truly the best choice. But in just a week's time, things go from bad to worse, as the war efforts go futile, as the states and politics slowly become puppeteered by brands influencing their enemies for their own means, and giant gold statues of them are built and then dropped into the seas by helicopters, somehow not cluing the footballs on how they get their lifeblood. It seemed that with the animals' big cannon, it seemed like they were ready to join the dog pile. The paranoid ramblings ranged from that the cannon would spew a shit ton of blood on the sea for no reason, to that the cannon would spawn the god of bad things and he would rape your mom or something. This varied quite a bit, and the reason it was like that was because, due to the newspaper industry having to be rid to supply the population with toilet paper, most of everything was word of mouth. Shanty towns sprawled across the rotting cities built chili out of cardboard for Funko Pops, destroyed PS2 parts and broken fidget spinners. The working masses spent their hours slaving in the factories producing gloves until their hand got snapped off in an accident with industrial machinery, leading for them to be sent to work at a musical talent agency. And the only food that the people could get their stumps on, their own diamonds really had. This truly cemented it as a horrible part of history, with diamond phagia running rampant. Why was it so bad? Because they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the diamonds. Not their taste, but they enjoyed having it. Truly horrible. So with its chaotic pain, so with its crushing might, the need to stop was finally acted upon. One of the football leaders arrived to a conversation with the brands and the animals at their doorstep and asked for them a mental health break. When the two powers, confused, asked why they should grant them this, to which the later responded that it would be pretty funny if this happened and their history books just had a random spot where they became good to live in for a month. The other powers agreed. After a quick shiny paint job, cue a fun capitalist block of earth full of billboards and arcade corners. In here, footballs went around having fun in packs, projectile vomiting blood on each other's projectile vomiting pythons for gross out humor, skating through parks to collect as many random floating letters before the government could nab it. and playing video games to help remind them of the horrors of reality, like Super Die in the War Brothers, Starve and Drown Simulator, and Santa's Big Sack, making good use of her break for a temporary paradise. Of course, there wasn't anything awful happening. Most notably 11/9, the day when two planes crafted two identical towers mid-air in the middle of a city, massively inconveniencing everyone in a plan by Osama Bin Laden as a gift to his favorite country amid Britain some of his fine creations. And the infamous O.J. Simpson case, where, instructed by a hallucinating carton of orange juice, Homer Simpson killed his wife with multiple hammers, only to be let off from jail after his lawyer argued that Homer was an inanimate object and thus could not be jailed. I don't know anything about the O.J. Simpson case. As the populace rightfully enjoyed their short but well-earned break, the leaders of the nation took this time to scream and argue over how they save this union and start genocide on a plan by heating it up till death as revenge. That is, until during a heated debate over if the animals will invent teleportation and kill all of them via teleporting into their butthole, one of the men pulls out a map of horse population density, and at that moment the attention of the room shifted to their old home, Africa. So full of resources. So uninhabited. It even looks like a deformed Yoshi too. And so, dusting off the old Nikes that is their football spirit, they got their old clubhouse cleared back down into a blank slate, destroying multiple up-and-coming species of fungi, 100-man colony of aliens disguised as rocks trying to meet up with the footballs, and its random fuck-off tablespoons of melting clocks. But don't you think it'd be better if we had more than some good old resources from Africa? Because now it's time to stage a massively planned out operation and get the entire population shipped to Africa to start fresh. Over just a single 2 days, just as the animals outside will begin to notice something off, they got their own place they spent years making and maintaining ditch onto a path to rot, with the only couple of non-football folks to know what was happening being some duck terrifies that managed to get past from detection after deciding to use a football suit instead. They couldn't even have the time to report right back. After much consideration carried out beforehand, the land in which this exodus will land on will be met on the first step of a journey, Egypt, chosen for its bountiful possibilities in the sand market that still exists today, and the pre-built pyramids in the area, ought to bring protection from any giant or brand that would step on them. While a little too piss-colored and full of snakes, the pros outweighed the cons. We introduced to a part of the world they've least known. They've done like a football and clutched it down as fast as they can. They learned to mesh their life of fun with their life of suffering, to really dominate these dunes while living under its rules. Instead of gaming on their game station for the means of having fun, they act like they're watching their sons getting tortured to it for the fun of the clouds. And instead of having their hand ripped off in an accident and then surviving, they get all but their middle finger torn out so they could still flip off small babies in public. During this test of learned skill in the desert, some people found out the pyramids weren't just there to act as societal metaphors, but as crypts of histories unattended to. And with a light and a big stone, they could go in there and laugh at the pussy things they cataloged, such as the various corpses, Mr. Beast, the god of death, the gay incest smut disguised as religious tales of salad, and much else. But the most important thing they found deep in these walls was this single story etched onto a rock in the corner, in which during a long midnight in the pyramid, Tutankhamun was visited by two lizards who came to invite the emperor to the moon, in which they will live in a giant mansion factory church house with hundreds of other lizards free of worry, and will be supplied of all their want as siphoned by the soldiers downstairs, the brands. Tutankhamun, not understanding English, simply shot them with a 12 gauge for trespassing and then went back to sleep. Can you guess what this led to? Well, the animals assuming that they fled when rushing into Europe for a fight. Duh. After the hatred in the camp reached a boiling point and the decision to attack was instigated, the settlement gathered up 200 men, 2 tanks, and 30 helicopters just to march into town and meet not a single face in pink. Only a lifeless city with nowhere or indication of this said lifelessness. The most fresh, top-quality archaeology site in the world. Just for a moment, they could have thought they must have been hiding in the bar, believed they were hiding in the bar, and then find nobody anywhere once they opened the doors. Because what was living in the sea was not no football, but the gods they left behind. Flying inexplicable miles, too late to catch the ship, were visited just in time by a better and finer replacement. With these things coming closer and closer, it was clear to start running away back home and search for shelter from whatever they're dealing with. But all fear and confusion was pushed out to watch through a window as the imposing brands decide to offer them a deal. They'll grant animal kind to access to Utopia, an upgraded experience of life in which the population's disconnection with each other is fixed and happiness will reign in new levels. All in exchange for an unnoticeable blend-in background change of making them their god. And with a couple of thoughts and hesitations, the deal got set. Goodbye obsolete places of old, as the sea streets were paved with gold. All of the world's problems are sold, and all of the world's pros got emboldened. And it was a whole century-long effort for mindful change skipped through in a moment, with the most obvious change being every couple of blocks containing a vat. A change that single-handedly fixes the hunger crisis, in which for a short period they could receive a little luncheon for their efforts. This was not limited to only public spaces, as even mansions of the rich were contained some of each hanging in the background, ignoring its own society like death or taxes. And as time kept on and these prayers would slowly shift from gratitude for their world to simple appreciation for their existence, and these gold-paved streets would just be referred to as streets, one of these animals could think, well, it sure might feel so much like a dystopia here, but isn't everything going alright? Everything is going to go safely. Everything is going to be alright. Or else everything was just being alright. On the other side of the sea was cooking something with a distinct football smirk stickered on it. A plan of their evil government. The mission was to move somewhere remote and safe, like say, enemy territory out and around some rivers in the Middle East, for insult's sake, and begin a project to become the hopefully first living thing in the universe to escape the atmosphere of a planet. Hopefully, in the sense we hope those lizard bastards up in the moon from earlier weren't real. But real or not, if they couldn't find any of there to shoot down, they can always just shoot each other. The research outpost spent its days trying to find out how to get off that darn moon they oh so carelessly chucked up the sky so long ago. In between days of deciding out more comfy pyramids for ethical reasons and eating grass in order to make things as maximally orange and gray as possible for swagger, whenever they'd be back to work, they'd be drafting up idea after try after idea after try. Attempts include but are not limited to using hundreds of shotguns to propel themselves upwards, driving a helicopter upwards for a long amount, making cars so they can drive upwards, straight up just making a huge magnet so the moon would come to them, create a mechanical carrier pigeon to take one of their men to it. This gig in the sky was quite show-offy, not something you wouldn't notice. But when the nearby animals in the area saw these attempts unfold in front of them, they saw it as some fine entertainment and watched on in glee, not aware of the ulterior motives and giggling to themselves. They could have almost paid them for it, but whatever they could have paid them would have been peanuts compared to what they gain right now. One night, a team of scientists, after vigorous testing of mice and poisonous liquid, concluded that the only way to get rid of the brands was by coating them in blue paint with a rocket in order to make them blend in with the sky's background. So to test this theory, they aimed a rocket full of paint into a small wooden target board on the door, only for the rocket to bounce off the thing when launched, fly up the atmosphere, and hit Neptune dead on. Just 3 hours later, an army on a rocket lands on the moon's surface. They are armed to the teeth with shotguns, aka 2 shotguns, drills made out of quality diamonds, jar of piss-filled razor blade launchers, and a pair of tails for the enemy bullets to bounce off of. For utility, nothing. Why? For enemy. It turned out that despite their rocket having recently just passed by everybody, their attention in their own mansion church factory wasn't averted at all. Ever since the beginning of football kind, these lizards were living snugly in the moon, in which their only job was to sit down and direct their brains downstairs, funneling their knowledge into their resources. Without knowledge, the brands could not do anything. God sent down for mortal gain. This was all learned much later, after every single lizard suddenly had an Xbox up their prostate, leading for them to all die. Not before turning an entire building into a white flag with magic and stealing every single diamond in it too. All those men that they had so many diamonds attached with them that, with much excitement, instantly learned how to do the fabled 360 quadruple Argentine front flip while walking back. It was time to get more men and colonize the squatting moon. But while everybody in the squad was walking back, a football took a small pause. Looking around the shattered building alone, walking a little from area to area, he finds a small note or a torn piece of paper on the ground next to a body. Damn, if those Americans get any diamonds, we're gonna be unstable, it reads. Football stared with silence, before pissing all over the lizard and running back to not miss the flight. Grassy plains, overlooking the sea. A young rabbit looking down at a bright flower. A violet, natural, and sharp little flower. The young rabbit looks up. A moon cloaked by the blue sky, suddenly dropping a rocket from its maw and letting crash down on Earth like a tear. The young rabbit looks in front of him. The Americas. As the rocket dropped down violently, a brave man maneuvers down on the nose of the rocket and parries it with a knife, making it lose all momentum and fall harmlessly. This saved them, but not for celebration, as the place they landed on was not possible to have grown on Earth by a glance, even for footballs. Pink scaly trees leaking gasoline onto the tips of the leaves of green yellow bushes while puffing oxygen by exhaling their leaves like lungs. Tom stand, probably all over the place. God, maybe it can be some alien planet, one thought. While wandering these dense jungles like a raccoon in a Disneyland cart ride, the most coherent observation they could attain in this place. Fuck off, obviously. And suddenly a whole platoon of footballers have jumped and dived straight into the waters, about to unknowingly swim across the Atlantic Channel into Europe, choosing not to go by boat as they wouldn't be as fast. They would return back to Europe in a little over 6 minutes, enjoying their sadly short-lived but well-deserved little jog in the water. But unfortunately, just halfway through, a footballer would look back and see this is not a jog, but a chase now. Because right behind him he found a whole swarm of Americans swimming on their trail, and the footballers were definitely more scared of it than it was of them. The horror was now permeating for the footballs upon discovering a brand new species was necessary to be acted upon. And so, as they were being chased, they decided to swan dive backwards in the sea and appear behind them, to turn them into the chase. Now they were getting what they wished to regardless of their motives. And for just the last couple of minutes in their jog-turn-chase, they could get a small cherry on top of their day by smelling at the panic emanating off the Americans. Up until the moment they hit the shorelines, because that would be when the Americans, having tricked their chasers into giving them the lead of a pack, boosted gleefully through the city, motives regarded with violent mystery. It was there, still in the water, as something clicked while watching the gnarled bodies of these enemy planets lively, like a telepathic message. Never let those Americans ever touch a damn atom of the diamonds. Never let them take over. And never let them take over, they will. And so begins the frantic, despaired defense of football kind against the Americans to harshly ensure that. Sprinting through their old Europe, trampling plants crawled over concrete and small animals looking for food off of them. They did so without nostalgia, as for them, this was entering an alien world with an already full map. Passing over a llama herd, we find a national bank turned vault of diamonds down layers of concrete surrounded by a jungle, just over in the middle of this continent. As he approached its guts carefully to not develop insanity from the incredible amount of diamonds, they took their measurements and turned the low-profile bank into an unmissable, unpenetrable fortress. Every inch of the structure was a trap, built to kill anyone even looking too close. Swiftly coating the entire structure in Satan's favorite color from all the Americans attempting to climb it. Not a janitor was brave enough to swipe the blood stink off, as every janitor was a soldier shortly after. Every single gun was being pulled out to fight in this war, as every single battle was an uphill one, especially for the subject in which they were defending. With the stage, Satan's favorite color became the flag of the earth, and everybody under it possessed a master's degree in anatomy, or whatever those Americans were made out of. Eating alphabet soup, The super sentient has come to deliver a message about the location of the Americans and will be soundly banging for its life as you slowly drink and kill it. Driving through the highway, they paved a huge film reel all over it so you can learn how to dismember someone while speeding in your car and looking down during it, usually acting as a breadcrumb trail to a battlefield somewhere. Itchy on the trigger was this world these days. On a particularly tough battle between the two forces in a little field on the north, a soldier rests his eyes from the bloodshed to see the clouds, previously motionless and seen with gun smoke, beginning to move. People began to stop behind some bodies to observe it, not many quickly understanding what this could mean. The lightning begins changing a little like a lamp over glass, getting more attention from the soldiers. The clouds are moving like plates being rearranged on a dining table. They stop dancing once the clouds move together into a large flat circle. More clouds couldn't be seen for miles, the stunning field contrasting with the circle's heavy shadow laying on the blood. Soldier eyes widen up. Both the armies are all now staring at the sky. The eyes widen even more as they notice the shadow growing darker, as if finally giving gravity. The cloud fell down onto the earth, but people underneath begin running away, fearing for their life or some otherworldly possession. Some of them too far inside its shadow only stare in horror, but in the end when the cloud hits the peak of a mountain it proves elastic qualities. In an instant, a thick sheet of woolly vapor covers all enormous distance under the green field. Everybody under it, soldiers or corpses, could be seen as a lump unnaturally poking out of the ground, hugged between the ground and the clouds. The alive ones wriggled and the dead did not. Some even attempted to cut through the wool with a pocket knife, but to no avail. The ones who dodged the clouds stepped up into their new surroundings carefully. They had to climb a little into it with how thick it was, and anything that was added in this place must have been important for it to interrupt one of their God-given fights. Every football finds themselves coming in one direction towards the peak of the mountain. As they get closer, they spot a baby sitting cross-legged on it, calm and collected while they approach, as if it was waiting for an audience to gather. The baby suddenly sits up from where it was perched and starts to speak in a language that was never once invented, but all the footballs could immediately understand. Dazed and of lesser status, they hung on every single word they couldn't write down. "Sup, fuckers," it spoke. "For since you have roamed out earlier, I've been yearning of satanic brawlers with no middle of a compass of morality. It is for this reason I have come to announce that we are going to change your species." It yelled, inching in decibels by the verb. "You and everybody who will not hear this announcement are hereby promoted from footballs," the crowd goes on, "the humans!" And so every single gut and every single walking pink thing began to aggressively ricochet through the limits of our bodies like a DVD media logo rushing for an opponent. All in the moves that can modify the Geneva Convention and the previous inconsideration for such a mutilation coming from the inside. Knees buckled from 100 playing discotheques of sodoms, exploding in their crevice body, that which only appeared in the empty lungs of giants. Not even the pinky toes were off limits to become parkour structures for the rectum tube slinkies, making horse gallops on fallopian tubes could do with. Horrifyingly enough, many people still walked around as this was happening to them. Usually the ones whose pains receptors have been ripped from their sockets early, but soon, only a minute after their guts all made their dance of sentience and then regrouped into different spots and crevices with muscle tissue to a group after, the people could finally find their body controllable again. And as they waved their forearms like wet squids in the wind, they realized that they had all transitioned into a new species. They could use their legs to get the rest of their body to stand upwards and adjust to their new yet familiar eyes, and how much they poke out of their skull. They use these balls to move them to their left and extort information to their brain. But their brain immediately arises a question. Why are the animals standing on their four legs? Why are the animals all eating off of leaves when they could have easily gotten up and grabbed an apple or two? This is ridiculous, and it conflicts with what I remember from these guys. What happened? As we come to find out in a short while, we're looking for the ruined cities and whatever they left immediately in front of them. Sometime during their leave to Egypt as the footballs, the animals thought to come into Europe and find all of their enemies evacuated without a trace. In this empty place, they go to meet the brands that had previously been trashing the place with a single goal, in which they will strike up a deal with. They get a utopic city of gold and diamonds, and they give the brands the position of God in their society. They live well and dearly here for about all the time that they'd be out until one day, for whatever reason, they lost the ability to write. How did it happen? They might never know. But what they do know is that they can't stuff these guys in farms and feed all of them, seeing how they're practically dead to weight right now. Because yes, now with a newfound species they inherit, it's time to reshape the world in a state more appropriate for them, including the animals getting put in farms to be killed and served. This is what we call today as humanism, the study of a culture spurred on after the football's ascension into humanity. The previously animal-built cities had their owners kicked out and inhabited, with some of the humans taking the blueprints of these buildings and beginning to build them overall on the Americans. The new styles of infrastructure spread all over and has done on fantastic effects on the world, making humanism almost fully widespread. In the culture of humanism, its participants would perpetuate traditions, such as pissing in specific rooms in the finals, arguing with people about things using mailboxes of agony, and creating billion-dollar industries that probably deal into human rights violations whenever they discover a fun fact about human psychology. Thanks to the mental changes brought on by the metamorphosis, humanity now feels a little dumbfounded at the latent people's obsession with diamonds, deciding to now put their massive stockpile of gems they had for commercial purposes, specifically towards the rich and as gems for marriage proposals, thanks to psychology professors deducing that diamonds have a 30% charm rate attribute to everyone in a 2-mile radius. The earth was carved up into different pieces and then given to all the world governors as the state that which they control, being decided via the longest game of shortest straw, with all the governors that the rest of the society thought were dicks getting one of the countries from middle Africa. Which was done for every single country except the USA, which was actually just a lie and really just a comfy place for the governor of Canada goes to chop a ciggy in, which he decided he'd not share with any other country. In 1971, the governors decided to invent religion into the world, which was also known as philosophy of words by many people. Despite this, religion was voted to be planted for 2 reasons. 1, to gauge just how terrifying the power of tradition is by seeing if it can port an entire facet of civilization mostly by itself. 2, because they agree religious art is fucking badass, not gonna lie. Finally, after over 30 years, on September 10th of 2001, NATO has finally announced that history has been ended. Using this new metal box contraption entitled the Forget What Happened Last Month in Nature, any important event will be kept from ever impacting anything over the timeline of 30 days. And any more additions to the history books would retroactively or as it's going will be written because it's funny. Examples include the Great Australian Emu War and the entire life of Mad Jack. And now, after 6 full pages of writing, you know exactly how the floor you step on and the string of decisions that led you here has really happened. So to a lousy today then. Some generic spiceless today in where time feels like a quicksand onto societal collapse. Some yet another shitty day of having to come to terms with the fact that society will one day gain the upper hand on you and crush you into place. Well, my fellow greenery, it is not! We used to rule this place, people. We used to be kings of a great and mighty forest before these intruders came and destroyed our way of life. And we can take over these footballs and steer the earth into its more traditional, long-proven, successful direction. Fellow flora fauna, who's with me? Yeah! I'm at the city! Just gotta wait a little while. Crud, at this speed, society might crumble before we can take it.
If nothing ever happens, we might just have time for it. Have patience.